This program has been made possible in part by the following sponsors. The Trial Lawyers Association of B.C. The Vancouver Courier newspaper. KCM Wealth Management. Yesterday I satisfied one of my regular habits driving along English Bay. I always stop and count the number of freighters in the bay. I like to tell myself that this is an indicator of our economic health. I counted 14 yesterday, and in spite of the inclement weather, which is here for the next umpteen months, I counted a number of sailboats and little motorized runabouts. All of which is to say that the decision by some lunatic in that checkerboard or chessboard we call Ottawa back in the fall to close down the Kitsilano Coast Guard Station is even more peculiar than ever. Let's find out how peculiar. Our guest is Bob Jackson. He's the Executive Vice President of the Public Service Alliance of B.C. Bob, do we even know who the guy was? Who was the person responsible for this?
It's hard to say who the person was.
Yes.
It seems to be, unless it's being driven by Stephen Harper himself.
I doubt that.
It's hard to. It's really hard to pin down exactly who is making these decisions. And
do we know the department?
Well, it would be the department that runs the Coast Guard. So the Defense Department or Transport, either one of those two. But it seems to me that there's a fairly small group.
Yes.
In Ottawa around Stephen Harper that are making the majority of these decisions. This decision around the Coast Guard is, I would say, a shining example of a much broader approach to dismantling our country as we know it. And it's.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean the Coast Guard is one of those things that we've taken for granted, right?
Yes.
And
we shouldn't.
And we shouldn't. However, it's always been there, and it's always been something that we can rely on, as have all the other services that are being affected by these cuts.
But I've always felt, and you must feel, always understaffed, undersupplied.
Well, anybody who's spent any time down there
yes.
at that Coast Guard station would know just how difficult a job that is and just how crucial a job that is. Back in September, we had the opportunity to go down and spend 24 hours in that facility with the people that work there. And
yes.
we got a very in-depth idea of what it is that they do, how hard they work, and how understaffed they are, and managing with the resources that they have.
They haven't started to take out the equipment and put in the deep fryers yet for the restaurant that's going to become.
Yeah, no, if that's what comes to pass, and we're convinced that that there's enough support. There has to be enough support to try and reverse this decision, because you're right, it is lunacy. What they're proposing there makes absolutely no sense.
Well, look, simple fact, and I don't know how many Canadians and even how many Vancouverites know this. Vancouver, fact. Largest port in the Dominion, right?
Right.
And we have the largest, sort of, in a sense, unguarded coast of any country on the planet.
Right.
Right? So having a good Coast Guard, would seem essential. You remember how many years ago was it? 7, 8, when we had this dreadful incident out at Steveston, Richmond, and a boat,
the Cap Rouge.
Exactly. And I remember being on talk radio at the time, and people phoning in and rushing, and people trying to help it. It was a complete mishmash.
Yep.
And people lost their lives.
Yeah. And those are the ones that really hit the press and we know about. I mean,
yes.
Formerly I worked for the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and we had an incident out here in the bay with one of our ship inspectors.
Yes.
Going up a gangway. There was a group of them going up a gangway to get on board a vessel.
Yeah.
And the gangway gave way, and a bunch of people were dumped into the ocean.
Wow.
This one member of ours was dumped onto the top of the launch on her back, broke her pelvis, broken bones, concussion, and went into the water unconscious.
Ooh.
If the Coast Guard had not been there,
Yes.
she would have perished.
Yes.
There's no question about that.
Yeah, my biggest
Absolutely no question.
My biggest fear in a story like that is if someone drops into the salt chuck right beside a very large, like a freighter or something, and could easily be sandwiched.
Exactly.
Look at the celebration of light, you know. How many incidents have we had over the years with people racing around out, you know, they want to be near the barge that's setting off the fireworks and so on. And we always, every year, we have some incident with some fool.
I know.
Yeah.
I've been on the water
Yes.
on a couple of occasions during the Festival of Light, and I've seen that firsthand.
Well,
I mean, it's insane. There's boats rocking. There's wake from larger boats. People are out there in the equivalent of dinghies.
Well, look,
let's
be honest about one of the real dangers. One of the real dangers we can blame on ourselves, and that is, I'm willing to bet that 90% of all leisure boat people have never seen a chart, let alone have the ability to read one. So they don't know what shorelines look like real sailors do, right?
Exactly.
So they just say, okay, I got this Evinrude and I got this steering wheel and here I go.
All right. All of a sudden, boom, you're in trouble, and then what do you do?
Yeah, and how many even relatively knowledgeable sailors will go out from quiet protected docks here and suddenly the wind changes and they're in deep trouble.
Yeah. I mean, I've spent, in my life, I've spent a lot of time in boats on lakes. You know, I come from the prairies and I spend a lot of time in boats. The first time I was out on the ocean, you get a real sense of the difference.
Oh, boy.
Because you're right.
Yes.
We were out just off the coast of Steveston,
Yes.
not too far away from the shoreline,
Yes.
and marine fog came in. And within a matter of 5-10 minutes, we
Yes.
were surrounded and we couldn't see where we were going. It's pretty scary.
That
and
is
it happens just like that.
Well, let's go back to the marine fog that somehow drifted 3,000 kilometers over to our nation's capital. I mean, have you or has anybody ever been able to talk to anybody who's making these decisions or close to them about how did you come up with this?
Well, we've tried, and a number of people have tried. We've tried to get a hold of James Moore, who's
Yes,
the senior
of course.
Conservative MP in BC. Won't talk to us. We've invited him to come down to the Kitsilano Station to meet the people and to actually see the facility that his government is responsible for closing. He won't come. I think it was quite clear on the evening news. I recall about a month and a half ago with Global was doing a piece, and they had a microphone with Nina Grewal. She was out,
Yes.
she's the MP for Surrey.
Yep.
Tried to get her to comment, to say, do you or do you not agree?
Won't
It was a yes or no question.
Yeah.
She wouldn't comment.
Yeah, you raised a very important issue, because this is not just a tactical decision, it's a political decision. And one of the things that's become very loud and clear, Bob, is that no Conservative members of Parliament will say anything about this.
And why is that? That's a question, I think, that
Wait a minute, you take this chair. You're right. Why is that?
I mean, we've tried. We've like I said, we wrote a letter to all the Conservative MPs in BC to invite them to comment on that.
Yes.
Not a peep. And that's why, as I said earlier, I think there's a very small group around Stephen Harper, the inner circle there, that are controlling what's going on here, and they're giving marching orders to people, and they're saying, no, you don't speak on this.
What is this larger plot that you suggested about 5 minutes ago? You're saying this is from your position, it looks like it's part of a larger strategy to do what? To disemploy people, to unemploy people?
Well, I mean, there's no question that the government is set on a fairly aggressive agenda to reduce, the numbers of federal people working in the public service.
Well, that's fine, but have you ever been to Ottawa? Go and look at.
I know.
Go and look at the building on the outskirts of Ottawa that houses the admin for CBC. You know the building at the foot of the Bride Street Bridge that has three strange sides to it. That's been there about 50 years. It's the identical building in rural Ottawa, and it's been CBC admin, an entire building of people pushing paper to put Rick Mercer on the air.
Incredible.
Fine. That's, wrap that up. That's fine with me, but Coast Guard?
Yeah. No, this extends past the Coast Guard. I mean, we're talking about not just the Kitsilano Station,
yes,
but they're talking about marine traffic, you know, and the broader picture of marine traffic. And in addition to the closure of the Coast Guard Station, they're also going to be closing these marine traffic centers in Tofino, Comox,
yes,
all the way up down the coast. So they're going to have, now they're going to have 2 centers. They want to close the one here in downtown Vancouver, where they deal with all the seaplanes.
So
landing. So here we are. So you got marine traffic control, which is essentially the same as air traffic control for airplanes, and they want to close that down and put it in 2 bases, Victoria and Prince Rupert.
Now let's put it in another interesting context. We just had a major discussion on this show about Enbridge. Let's say Enbridge proceeds and we get a pipeline to Kitimat or wherever it's going, or Prince Rupert, and we have a lot more carrier traffic on the West Coast.
Oh, it'll be okay. We'll just deal with it from Victoria. That's what the government's trying to. That's what they're trying to sell.
And if someone falls in the drink in English Bay, they're going to wait while they're gulping water. They're going to wait for someone to come from, where's the nearest?
Well, it's going to be if the station is on the other side of the south arm of the Fraser River, so the other side of the airport, or they're going to wait for somebody to come from Deep Cove or Horseshoe Bay.
Excellent.
And they're not going to be in that water very long because they'll perish.
Yeah, it just takes a few minutes.
It doesn't take very long. That water's cold.
Yeah. So, what about the famous mayor?
Gregor Robertson?
Yes.
Yes. Well, I mean, I don't think anybody, you know, going back to this whole idea of consultation, the government didn't consult anybody. They're out there saying, oh yeah, we consulted, we fully consulted with everybody. Well, they didn't consult with the mayor. They didn't consult with the city council. They didn't consult with the Parks Board. They didn't consult with anybody that we can pinpoint to. So
at least one council member, I think it was Tim Stevenson, did speak up, but he's one and he's not the most famous and the most powerful council member. Did I not read that our mayor was saying he was going to try to do something about this? He was going to speak up? Have we had anything from his corner?
There's been a request to have a meeting, to have a discussion, a sit-down discussion about this, and to start that consultation. Nothing. There's been absolutely nothing that we've heard of from Ottawa that indicates that they're prepared to go ahead with that.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll take a little breather and come back. Let's talk about what political action is being organized or could be organized, or what we have to do to fly in the face of, to counteract something that flies in the face of good common sense. I mean, it's just really simple. Our guest is Bob Jackson. We'll take a little breather and tell you that davidberner.com is the site to go to. We're always happy to hear your thoughts or email, and give a chance to say hello to some of the wonderful people who help us put this program here on Shaw Community Television, Cable 4. Back in a minute. This program has been made possible in part by the following sponsors. The Vancouver Courier newspaper. KCM Wealth Management. The Trial Lawyers Association of B.C. Not too many weeks ago, the federal government, in its wisdom, moved a serial killer from solitary confinement in a maximum security prison back east to a medium security prison and put him in a cell with another inmate. The serial killer said, "I don't think you want to do that. I'm a serial killer." They did it anyway, Corrections Canada, in their wisdom, and within days, the serial killer strangled his cellmate to death. Now, the cellmate was serving time, but it doesn't matter who you are, you're still entitled to safety. When this incident was investigated, nobody found any problem with Corrections Canada. They said no one was to blame. Of course, if I were in charge, I would have everybody fired and I'd tell people to sue them in civil court. That decision, by the way, when they confronted the serial killer after he'd strangled his cellmate, he just went, "I told you, I'm a serial killer." So that decision is just about as reasonable as closing down the Kitsilano Coast Guard Station, because we're talking about the safety of Canadian citizens. We're talking about our own people, you know, putting them in the face of danger.
Right.
So it can't possibly make any sense.
No.
Yeah.
And we've given statistics. The statistics are out there about how long it's the response times.
Yes.
You know, for somebody coming from, you know, they say that, well, the hovercraft, we're going to put a new hovercraft over, you know, in the South Arm, and it's going to be wonderful, and they'll be able to service all these needs. Well, it's going to take, in good weather,
yes,
it's going to take a minimum of 35 minutes, closer to 45 minutes
to get
from that location into the inner harbor of Vancouver.
Dead.
And
drowned.
I mean, there's so many things that can go wrong. The people that are there now,
yes,
they get the call, they hop in the inflatable, they're on the water, full throttles within 2 or 3 minutes, and they're at the location within 5 minutes.
Wow.
That's what it takes to save lives.
Yes.
We're not talking about putting out money to build a new facility and to buy new equipment and all this stuff. All that stuff is there.
Yes.
It's there now. It costs a minimal amount of money. In the bigger scheme of things, we're talking $800,000 to operate that facility for a year. They spend $800,000 in a heartbeat on an advertisement telling everybody how bad Thomas Mulcair is going to be for us. They do that in 1 minute.
I could go to Ottawa or Victoria or any provincial legislation right now, and I could clear out desks by the acre load of people who are sitting on committees, who are having conversations about nothing and filing papers that are wasting tax money. But Coast Guard?
It makes absolutely no sense.
Well, it's somewhat similar to how much we don't protect workers in terms of a government oversight in farms, government oversights in the forests, and so on. We consistently do a bad job at that, and yet isn't that the job of a government, is to provide oversight? If you're not going to run businesses yourself, and you're going to let free enterprise operate, isn't the role of government to provide oversight?
Exactly, and I've said, you know, at the numerous rallies that we've had up until this point,
yes,
and I've said a couple of times, this government was not elected, and they don't have a mandate to dismantle essential public services and put Canadians at risk. I don't think that was on the ballot. It certainly wasn't. I don't recall that discussion
yes,
when the election was going on.
No.
I mean, the government is elected to protect Canadians and protect our infrastructure and protect our way of life and protect our safety. That's what they're there to do.
Yeah.
This decision is clearly not about that, and it really begs the question of what's behind this.
So can you give us some other examples of what's behind this? Are there? I mean, maybe I'm missing some of these. But
well, I'm really at a loss to figure it out.
Yeah.
You know, you would think that there would be somebody somewhere that would have stood up and said, "Yeah, we think this is a reasonably good decision." There hasn't been anybody, and it doesn't come from, you know, from the unions. It doesn't come from specifically. It doesn't come from any group
yes,
in particular. We've got the Jericho Sailing Center that have been very vocal in this whole thing. People, you know, the Pleasure Boaters Association, the fishermen.
Yeah.
Everybody who works and lives on the water and plays on the water has been very, very vocal about this.
Where's our former mayor who has been so active in handicapped sailing out of Jericho for many years?
Yeah, well,
I haven't heard any statements from him.
Haven't heard anything from him, you're right.
Yeah, he's busy having salons. Okay, what are you doing? You're the Executive VP of Public Service Alliance B.C. I know you had a big rally a month or so ago at the station. You were there. Jim Sinclair, president of BC Fed, was there.
Right.
Other labor union people. Lots of workers were there.
So we've that was one opportunity for us to highlight that problem.
Yes.
And so we were able to convey, our message about what that was. And again, that was a message that came from all sorts of people. During that occupation, we had fishermen there.
Yep.
We had pleasure boaters there. We had the Federation, as you say. So there was a bunch of us there delivering a similar message. We've also conducted a couple of rallies on site, both at the Coast Guard base itself. There was a fairly big rally at the Jericho Sailing Center earlier this summer.
Good.
There's going to be another such rally that's we're going to put together probably at the Jericho Sailing Center again to try and highlight the problem.
Do we have any timelines? Because one of the things that the government has been very peculiar about, I'm being generous when I say peculiar, you might substitute that with sneaky, is they're not saying that there's a particular date for this facility to close down.
Well, you're right. They've been kind of wishy-washy about it. They said, well, at the end of the boating season, well, maybe we'll do it in the spring. I think they're trying to gauge exactly how damaging this is going to be for them, because they know it's going to be a disaster. What are they going to do? What's the government going to do when the first person goes into the water out there and there's nobody there to save them, and God forbid that they perish? What's the government going to do? What's James Moore going to say? What's Stephen Harper going to say?
I have to tell you,
how are they going to explain it?
It's interesting that you mentioned James Moore twice. James, when he started out, was a very interesting and I thought admirable young politician, and he's been very active and vocal, and he is an interesting politician. And I'm sorry to hear that he's not stepping forward, because in the past he did step forward on issues. Let's talk about somebody else who we might have thought we might have heard from. We used to have a Conservative MP who was very vocal on matters marine, named John Cummings. And now, of course, he's gotten embroiled with the BC Conservative Party, such as it is. Have we had a peep from John?
It seems he's been fairly embroiled in his own situation there. I guess.
Yes, I know. A lot of political intrigue there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know that the current Premier, Christy Clark, has at least voiced her opinion and voiced some opposition to this, which indicates that the province wasn't consulted either on this decision.
So has Public Service Alliance or BC Fed, anybody, made an appointment with Premier Clark and said, okay, what are we going to do about this?
Well, as you know, the Premier's fairly busy. I don't know that she would be able to make any room on her schedule for necessarily the Public Service Alliance of Canada.
Wait a minute, fairly busy? There's no legislature. They're on holiday.
Oh, yeah.
I want a gig like that. How do we is that in your contract? Did you get 3 months off?
No.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
It's peculiar, yeah.
But, in all seriousness, I think that it's very difficult, to try and sort of pin somebody down to make a statement.
Yes.
I mean, if the government is so convinced that this is the thing to do, why not have a representative or a couple of representatives from the Conservative Party go down there, spend some time, talk to the people that work there, do their own press conference down there, and invite people to come and ask them questions about why this is such a good idea. I mean, obviously, they must think it is a good idea. They wouldn't be proceeding with it.
I just thought of a strategy. It wouldn't cost you too much. You shoot a 3-minute video, okay? Lots of folks will do that for you, right? And you put it on a little flash drive. They cost pennies, and you flood Parliament with these flash drives and say, you better watch this.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a bad idea.
Your coast is in danger.
That would be a good idea.
Yeah.
One of the other things that we've been trying to do is mobilize people to go and talk to their MPs, because the MPs won't come and talk to them.
Are you getting a public response? Because we have a problem. I mean, people think that this economy runs on real estate and latte, and they forget this is the largest port. This is a marine city. This is what Vancouver is doing here. Vancouver isn't an accident. There's a reason it's here.
Right. No, I think, you know, we talked early on about people taking things for granted and institutions that have been around for a long, long time.
Yep.
If people don't routinely access that service or don't need it on a regular basis, they may not realize that once it's gone, it's gone. And when they go to use it, when they're in dire need, it's not going to be there for them. We're seeing that with veterans, you know, the closure of Veterans Affairs offices. We're seeing that in Human Resources and Development Canada with the closure of those offices, Service Canada, all these things where people, they're now that these cuts have been underway for a significant period of time, and now they're seeing the effect of those, that those services aren't going to be available. Same thing with the Coast Guard. Somebody, and it's going to happen, we know it's going to happen. Yeah. Somebody's going to be injured out there or worse.
Well, Bob, I hope you and the Public Service Alliance and BC Fed and others are able to reverse this. It's flat out a stupid decision.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's got to be reversed. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Great to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Bob Jackson, Public Service Alliance B.C. Next week, Kelly Larenge, who is the chair of the Real Estate Foundation of BC. Would you know that there is such a thing? The Real Estate Foundation has given out something like $50 million in grants to organizations to do all kinds of wonderful, interesting work, including that famous Mike Harcourt word, sustainability. So Kelly will be our guest next week. We got some great videos to show you some of the things that they're supporting. Thanks for being with us, and keep tuned to Shaw Community Television, Cable 4. Good night.